everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Back at it with another video. We are now going to be taking a deeper look into the Mercury retrograde in Libra through all 12 signs. Those of you guys who are new to my channel, welcome. Those of you guys who are members and subscribers, welcome back. Do me a favor, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment below, let me know, are you feeling this already? And what are you anticipating in terms of this Mercury retrograde? Theme-wise, is it hitting any important spots in your chart? And if you're new, do let us know where you're tuning in from. We've seen so much growth in the channel over the last couple of months. Just a big thank you to all of the new subscribers. Boy, oh boy. So if you guys remember, not too long ago, we did a previewing Mercury in the sign of Virgo and Libra. We talked about some of the most important topics. It was really just kind of like my first hot takes, a lot of rapid fire of me talking about some of the transits and the aspects. We're going to go through it. It's condensed, so you're going to have all the most important dates. And we're also going to look at some cool new things that I'm doing on the channel, some astrological remedies, and just some other goodies, some tips and tricks for a Mercury retrograde. So let's go ahead and get started and get into that. This is going to be the Mercury retrograde in Libra for fall of 2022 for all 12 zodiac signs, brought to you by me, Candice of Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. Well, guys, this Mercury retrograde is going to be in Libra, okay? So it's going to be in a cardinal air sign. Air element deals with information, intellect, communication, right? And we're actually going to see that the Mercury shadow, it actually started in Virgo. So Mercury will go all the way up to Libra, backtrack, retrograde back to Virgo. It's almost kind of like leaving your house and then realizing you forgot something back at home. You forgot your wallet, your purse, your phone. You got to go back and you got to get it. And there is like a whole process to going back before you can get on track to doing whatever it is that you had planned. So when this retrograde begins, it will turn retrograde in Libra. It will actually spend most of its time in Libra between the stationing. It's going to sit, you know, at 8 degrees for a couple days before the retrograde begins. It's getting ready to do that now. But it's important to look at both Virgo and Libra. Now we know that because Virgo is a mercurial sign, ruled by Mercury, Mercury is going to be a lot more comfortable in the sign of Virgo. It's going to make some better aspects too, because we're going to see a couple trines to Pluto. But just to break it down, the retrograde is actually in Libra. When we're looking at Mercury when it's in Virgo, where it has been these last couple of weeks, we see topics like health, pets, coworkers, habits, our diet, nutrition, fitness, digestion, but also delays, and we can also be more accident prone because Mercury or Virgo 6th house really kind of covers all of these topics. Now, versus Mercury being in Libra, whether it's direct or it's retrograde, remember when we're dealing with a retrograde, it's more internal. So we're going to see this become more internalized conversations, rethinking things, all of that stuff. Libra is a sign associated with relationships and marriage. Also counselors, therapists, clients, open conflict. I always joke, these are the people who will stab you in the chest, not in the back. It's also about legal stuff, finding fairness, dealing with beauty, diplomacy, design, and harmony. Because Mercury Libra wants to harmonize. It wants to be the mediator. It wants to find fairness and balance and create more harmonious conversations. So it's kind of cool to see it go through Libra, turn around, back up, go back into Virgo, at least from our perspective. It's not actually going backwards. Retrogrades are just based off of how the planet is actually like spinning. And from our perspective on Earth, it looks like it's going backwards, but it's just slowing down. So Libra forgot something in the kind of like Virgo area that Mercury needs to like return to, and it's going to uncover some kind of information, some facts, some details. Maybe it'll clean something up, organize something, perfect something. That's kind of what we see in the midst of a Mercury retrograde, okay? Now, Mercury retrograde do's and don'ts. Like, I'm not an astrologer who's going to sensationalize a Mercury retrograde. I'm kind of neutral on the matter. Is it trickier because when we're dealing with a Mercury or a Venus or a Mars retrograde, it's closer to the sun, so we feel it more, right? But Mercury retrogrades more often than any other planet in terms of its actual retrogrades per year. We see generally 3, sometimes some years we'll see 4 retrogrades involving Mercury. Now, all year the retrogrades have been starting actually in air signs, and they retrograde back to earth signs. So my interpretation of that has basically been, how do we rework something? How do we communicate this with other people? Where can we bring in more information and, like, you know, better structurally plan or organize? Where do we create that physical change? Especially because it's been happening in Taurus, Virgo, and also Capricorn in this last year. And I think a lot of this is just about planning. You know, bottom line, it's planning. Mercury in earth sign is just kind of very practical. But some do's and don'ts, and some of these are more kind of general. I'll get more into the specific themes in the next slide, but because Mercury rules gadgets, communication, driving, anything in relation to apps and technology, like, we're going to see some wonky things with these types of, you know, just topics in our life. So we can see printers go haywire, phones sometimes fall in the pool. We definitely see some communication breakdown, some dropped Zoom calls. This is all Mercury, because Mercury is the messenger god. But it's going to have a twist to it, because it's going to have a very kind of Venusian energy, because it's going to be retrograding first through a Venus-based sign. So do's for a Mercury retrograde would be like rethink, revise, review, remember, reorganize, anything that's about reworking something. Like, I love to save Mercury retrograde periods to, like, go through courses, to edit things that I'm writing, to reorganize a drawer or a closet. I like to make a list during the shadow of, like, everybody I need to get back to, or things that I need to get back into the habit of doing. So these are things you guys might want to consider doing during this Mercury retrograde, especially because Mercury will have a really strong, kind of more powerful vibe when it's finally dipping back into Virgo when it's retrograde, because it's in a sign that it does well in, but also because it's going to be uncovering something that we missed or that we did not see. With trines to Pluto, it's going to have like a power up to it. Decluttering, especially a Mercury retrograde as it drops into Virgo, great for decluttering. We want to read the fine print in anything during a Mercury retrograde. You know, I know that life happens. We can't always, like, shut our life down during, you know, some planetary aspects and just stay idle for 3 weeks at a time. For a lot of us, it's not feasible. So it is important to just consider these do's and don'ts as you're moving through the next couple of weeks. Read the fine print on leases, credit agreements, taking jobs, anything like that. Like, ask all of the questions, because some things may not be clear. You also want to work on communication, right? Finding more balance in terms of how you communicate and tune into yourself, whether that's through meditation or journaling, or just how you communicate with other people, especially because it's in the sign of Libra. So we're all having to consider other people and also ourselves in the midst. Where are we giving too much? Where could we be doing more? We're going to be readjusting those scales as Libra does. And it's a great time to wrap up loose ends. So with retrogrades, it's kind of like cleaning out the cosmic fridge, right? If we didn't have retrogrades or eclipses, we wouldn't have opportunities to kind of strategize and just clean stuff up, you know? So if we're needing to wrap up a job, a relationship, if we need to kind of finally iron out and put the final finishing touches on a project, that's what retrogrades are for. So don't fear the retrograde. This one can actually be particularly insightful because of some of the aspects that it's making. Now, some don'ts that I would have, and these can be more general. Obviously, it's going to differ person to person. I would say don't publish things, okay? So we don't want to basically be like, yes, we're sending, you know, the book off for print. No, we might want to wait a little bit, get a second set of eyes on it, you know, make sure that everything's cool with, like, editing. We don't, because Mercury deals with things that might be written, or it might deal with, like, lessons or courses. You know, as I'm going through this, I'm editing a bunch of things. I'm getting, like, a calendar ready. I'm being super mindful of the retrograde, just knowing that until we at least get to the Cazimi period, which will be that halfway point, there's going to be some stuff that might be overlooked. So be careful with publishing. Launching new ventures like websites, businesses, things like that, especially because Mercury deals with, like, commerce, exchange, like credit cards and processing stuff. If we're launching a business during a Mercury retrograde, unless you're going back and, like, reworking something, like let's say you had a business or you had like an Etsy shop or something and you took a break. If you were to return, totally fine. But if you're like, hey, I've got this business idea, I'm going to launch this website, I'm going to print business cards, I'd be like, let's just wait a little bit. Wait till Mercury goes direct or it starts coming out of the post shadow before we do any of that. But you can definitely work on it during the Mercury retrograde, especially because we're going to have a little bit more focus and like insight and time to really connect to how we want to communicate before we present something when it goes direct. Be very careful with dealing with other people, just in general, because it is in Libra, but especially signing contracts, because Libra can have a connection associated with like law and legality. So can Sagittarius or Jupiter. And in the midst of this retrograde, we're going to see Mercury oppose Jupiter several times. The pros of that is that I think through relations with other people and how we're kind of finding our relationships to show us a lot about ourselves, that's positive. So we're learning a lot about ourselves through other people. The downside of that is we can find ourselves in some sticky kind of legal situations where we're negotiating something, we agree to something, and we don't read the fine print. So signing contracts is something you want to be really mindful of. If you're being given any leeway, if there's flexibility in signing it, if you can kind of wait until at least Mercury goes direct or comes out of the shadow, that would be ideal. Buying cars, signing leases, right? Especially Mercury ruling vehicles, especially I think of like Mercury going retrograde, dropping down into Virgo. Like there could be delays in getting cars, having cars delivered. We might get cars that have scratches or dings or they're dirty when we make a purchase. They may actually have issues. There might be some mechanical issues because Mercury can deal with that. And signing leases, especially for like office spaces, because Virgo deals with offices, or just signing leases with partners. Like if you've been in a relationship where you're kind of like your relationship is up in the air and you're like, it's now or never, we have to buy the house or we have to move or my lease is up. Keep in mind, retrogrades, things change. We change our mind. We return to something or we review something. So there is some kind of flippy floppiness that can happen during your retrograde. And I would say those situations, you're better off waiting if at all possible. Now, let's say you can't wait, doing something temporary, right? Like extending, like contacting your landlord, being like, hey, can I pay month to month for the next month or two until I decide if I'm going to stay, if I'm going to relocate? Looking at possibly like getting a lease rather than buying a car, or extending a lease, or possibly buying a used car or borrowing a car until that way you can get out of this period, and then you can make a purchase. These are some things that I would recommend. In this particular retrograde, updating relationship status is definitely a thing I would recommend you guys not do. So whether that's like on Facebook or you're wanting to go official and you want to post photos of like you and your new person. I know some of the stuff I'm going to say about relationships kind of sounds like Debbie Downer, but I'm just going to be honest with you guys. Like a retrograde in Libra in itself is already reworking the ideas of relationships and how we communicate and come together. But Mercury can be social media. With oppositions to Jupiter, you're going to have some people who want to appear single. They want to appear free or not tied down. So it's interesting as we're going into September, or you know, some younger people affectionately call this like cuffing season, where we're looking to get into relationships before the holidays begin. And it's like we get into relationships in September. We've got people clear, you know, through the holidays, and then probably New Year's, and then Valentine's Day. And then everybody kind of wants to be free during the spring and the summer, you know. I think we're going to see lots of back and forth in relationships. I wouldn't recommend posting statuses. Now, retrogrades can bring up karmic things. So like, let's say you've been back and forth in an open relationship where there's no commitment, and then finally somebody says, yes, let's commit, let's do it. Like some of those things can be meant to be, but I'd be careful with posting about it, talking about it. Some people may not be ready to be Facebook official, if you get what I'm saying. I would also recommend against planning weddings because Mercury is retrograde, okay? So it's about businesses. It's also about communicating personal values and interests in aesthetics or relationships, Libra. So you might be trying to find caterers, you might be trying to find people, scheduling things. Just do me a favor, just wait until after the retrograde to do that. If you want to look at vendors, if you want to look at spaces and places where you can get married, totally fine. You can look at all that stuff. Just don't sign anything, don't agree to anything, because there can be changes in what you actually agree to and whether or not other people can fulfill what you've agreed to, whether that's people that you're hiring for a wedding or your relationship in itself. Be very careful when you're purchasing traveling, anything in regards to travel. Tickets, you know, bus fares, if you're blocking things out in your schedule or planning trips, okay? Some people already have trips planned in the midst of Mercury retrograde. I just tell them double and triple check all of your accommodations. Make sure that the rental is going to be there. Make sure you actually have a confirmation code for your Airbnb. Make sure you have luggage tags and you have maybe insurance on your tickets. That's really the best that you can do. You might experience some delays. That's inevitable. Especially if you're planning on traveling with another person, there can be some hiccups. But purchasing travel, like if you absolutely have to do it, just triple check things. If you don't have to do it yet, spend time researching places, looking into it, but not necessarily hitting that buy button quite yet, unless you're willing to have a couple things that might change. And last but not least, buying gadgets without a warranty. It drives me absolutely crazy how every single time Apple drops a brand new iPhone, it seems like there's this reoccurring theme where it's like right in the midst of a shadow period, right? And I know they do it in the fall, but like the last couple phones, I feel like there's been some significant shadow or retrograde that's going on while they release it. Okay, so you've got Mercury retrograde getting ready to happen. Mercury rules phones. Those of you guys who are like, I'm buying that new iPhone. Some people would say from a technical standpoint, it's not the best thing to buy the very first one that comes out anyway, because they can be buggy, there can be glitches, we can see issues with the software. But if you're going to spend a significant amount of money on buying a new gadget, I would say wait. You know, you can order it, but I would say wait if you can until after the retrograde, because you might get a better deal somewhere else, or you might find that aesthetically you don't like the color that you bought, or maybe there's something wrong with it, there's a defect on it, something like that. If you must buy gadgets, big screen TVs, laptops, computers, phones, like do consider getting a warranty or getting insurance on it, just in the off chance that there's a problem with it. Save your receipts, okay, so you can return them. There can also be a sense of like people buying people things and then being like, I don't like this, can I return it? Because it's in Libra. So these are just a few do's and don'ts just to keep in mind. On to the themes of this Mercury retrograde. I mean, I try to look at things and not, you know, judge it. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen. It's just a matter of our interpretation of whether or not some of the hiccups or the challenges can actually produce some kind of positive learning lesson or life experience, or there's some kind of pot of gold at the end of this. So there is some silver linings to this, guys. But I'm seeing lots of opportunity for relationship disharmony, right? A Mercury retrograde going through Libra, dipping back into Virgo. The 6th house, which Virgo is associated with, is the 12th house to the 7th, okay? So it's like where things come out, secrets come out, things in regards to relationships. Now, this may only really affect specific signs in that way, and I'll get to that in a second. But still, we're going to see some issues with relationships as Mercury leaves harmonious Libra, goes back into Virgo. You know, we're going to see some squares right when Mercury is stationing to Mars. So there's going to be this reworking of how do I do what I want to do, what I need to do, and still respect what you want and what you need, and how do we find our own personal individuality but still find time to come together, right, and respect each other. I'm realizing it's a lot of like not needing to understand the other person, not needing to agree with the other person, but it's more about like learning to be more conscious and more self-aware, and also being more aware of like relationship dynamics and where things kind of get out of line, and there's like a need to be like, hey, this isn't fair. Because a lot of this with the oppositions to Jupiter about learning about the relationships to ourselves. So some people are going to have the experience where they're like, I've had enough, this isn't working for me, you know, I'm being too lenient, I've given you too much. And on the flip side, some people are going to realize that where they've been really selfish or closed off to relationships or closed off to love, it's delaying their own process of growth as well. So I think we're going to learn about how to grow together by being more self-aware. But yeah, breakups. I mean, we see that when we see Venus retrogrades or retrogrades through Venusian signs. That's just kind of the way that it goes. I also think we're going to see canceled or delayed weddings or ceremonies. I hate to say that, but because Venus does rule unions and coming together with other people, the retrograde can signify delays, especially in the sign of Virgo, as a result of people having scheduling conflicts, health issues. We can't get vendors, we can't find the time or the space, or there's new health regulations or other things that are going to inhibit our ability to either travel or attend some of these events, or there's just drama, right, that's happening from the retrograde in Libra. People are breaking up, we're realizing like, okay, it may not happen, you know, we're not engaged anymore, or we're no longer planning a wedding, we don't live together. Unfortunately, that kind of stuff can come up. Discovering unhealthy relationship or personal habits. So like where we have developed unhealthy personal habits as a result of relationships being out of balance, like being in a relationship with somebody who is constantly dragging their feet and delaying and like not wanting to get things done, and like where you've allowed that to affect your schedule, and there in turn you've become like lazy, or you've become delayed in terms of reaching or achieving some of your goals, right? But also like bad habits. Like I think about people who just want to hang out and, you know, eat the potato chips on the couch all the time, and you get into the habit of doing it because that's what you and your partner do. Or, you know, like recreational drug use, drinking. You know, Virgo is our habits. So I think a Venus retrograde is where we're realizing that because there's no boundaries or there isn't enough balance in relationships, we kind of merge and blend together and we lose ourselves in that dynamic. And we can develop some really unhealthy mental, emotional, physical kind of patterns and habits that are just not healthy for us. And so the retrograde can uncover and make us realize like, wow, maybe I, you know, do have this issue because of the partnership that I'm in, and they don't want to change, or they don't want to go to the gym, or they don't want to stop smoking. So I'm kind of like, you know, thrown into the mix of this, and like I'm still doing it. I never realized it wasn't me. So there will be some stuff like that for some people. Obviously, retrogrades in the sign of Libra can bring back past lovers. They can bring back exes from the past. We can see that there are themes about people from the past, especially if you had relationships with people who might be a Libra or a Virgo, or some significant Virgo or Libra placements. And they can return also because of personal crisis. So I think that we're also going to see lots of people who are doing well, thriving, moving on with their life and their relationships, and you're going to see some exes that are going to see that and they're going to have a meltdown, or they're going to be in the midst of not finding happiness or not working through their stuff, and they might reach out. By the same token, I've seen a lot of people who are like, that's it, I cracked, you know, I sent that email to my ex, or I contacted his mom and told him how terrible, you know, her son acted. I mean, like, I'm hearing crazy things. And there can be a sense of, is the grass greener? Because all these placements in Virgo, like Venus and the Sun and Mercury, they're all opposing Neptune. So there's a sense of feeling lost or disillusioned or not connected, and like wanting something that you may not be able to have because you're having issues being alone. So watch for those people from the past coming back. Not everybody is meant to stay. I actually think that this is an awesome retrograde for finally closing the door on some relationships and getting closure. Doing that because Mercury is going to trine Pluto. So there is like this sense of catharsis and disconnecting and being like, it's done. This isn't good for me. It's time to let it go. It's not empowering me. But also the oppositions to Jupiter and Aries, where we learn more about ourselves in that process. So if you've had an ex hanging around, if you've had a hard time moving on, letting go of someone or something, this is a really good time to do it. Uncovering dishonesty among partners and coworkers. I mean, unfortunately, that's a bit of an issue because we're going to see Mercury oppose Neptune. So there's room for fuzziness, dishonesty, manipulation of words, not seeing so clearly. Squares to Mars, where there can be some conflicts of ideas and some fierce exchanges in terms of what is right or wrong, or they said this or they said that. And Libra energy is gossipy. That's just kind of the way that it is. So when Mercury retrograde is a lot of like, did you hear this? I heard that. And by the time it comes out, you know, it's like this telephone game. So there can be a sense, especially when it's retrograde, of just uncovering like, this person wasn't honest with me, or they were trash talking me, or they said this behind my back. And it can involve relationships because of the Libra aspect. It can involve coworkers because of the Virgo aspect. So watch for that. There can definitely be some office gossip and issues in the workplace, as well as changes in schedule or location of workplace. So some people might find out, okay, we're finally fully going back to the office with a new schedule. Some people might find out we're moving offices, we're changing schedules, teams are being split up, we're rearranging things, there's new departments. Maybe you've got issues with coworkers and people getting sick and not showing up, and then, you know, stuff doesn't get done. That's something else that kind of happens during a Mercury retrograde. And for some people, it can be returning back to work. So if you've been experiencing like an injury, or if you've been having a hard time finding a job, or you've been working at home since the pandemic, maybe you're finding out that you're finally going back to work. Mercury retrograde can bring up issues with pets having health issues. So this is general, but Mercury is pets especially smaller pets, cats, dogs, birds, things like that, that we would kind of keep domestically. So there can be issues with certain pets having health problems, and stuff that's hard to diagnose across the board. Same for us humans, because Mercury will oppose Neptune. So there's a sense of like, we need to take the dog to a vet. Okay, something's wrong with the dog. The dog needs to go to a specialist. Now we have to find a specialist. Or, weird blood tests and things coming back, results coming back. Dogs or, pets having strange reactions to food. So changing food on pets is not a really great thing right now. Them getting into things, also getting into stuff that may not be good for them, drinking or eating things, especially drinking things with the opposition to Neptune. And sometimes we see issues with like pets having issues with water, drinking contaminated water, having allergic reactions, having issues with throwing up, drowning. I mean, these things can all happen with oppositions to Neptune. Changes in our physical fitness or diets, because Virgo is about our daily routines. So some of us are going to find, you know what, I'm cutting this from my diet, or I'm adding this, or I'm going to go to this new gym or that new gym. For the last week or two, we've been in shadow. So we've already been kind of feeling this energy. Nothing is new. So I would say really take a look at the dates I'm going to give you in a second and just reflect on what's been happening since then. When we are in a retrograde or even a shadow, we're tweaking things, we're changing things, we're perfecting things. So for many of us, it's going to take until about mid-October to kind of feel like we've figured this out. So don't beat yourself up if you haven't kind of gotten the show on the road with some of this stuff yet. But be mindful that if you are somebody who wants to make changes to your physical fitness, your diet, your wellness, this can be an awesome time for you to do that. That includes kicking bad habits. So if you want to quit smoking, if you want to quit, recreational drug use, if you want to quit drinking, or if you want to cut back, if you want to stop eating certain things, if you want to get into a schedule or a habit where you're like, I'm getting up early and working or working out or going to a gym, this can be a wonderful time to do that. Some of us will be changing doctors, okay? So the 6th house is healers. Changing doctors, changing vets, changing beauticians. So you might change who's going to cut or color your hair. You might, go to a different barber. We can have changes with nannies, when people who help clean our homes or watch our children or walk our pets. Changes with gyms, what gyms we're going to, or just choosing to go back to working out, or changes in staff. So there can be definite changes in staff, because that's Virgo as well. And the theme, I think the big theme is where we're learning to grow on a personal level from partnership conflict, right? Libra 7th house is about open conflict. So there is, in a way, Mercury going retrograde being like, there's not a lot of balance here, or like, I don't like the way you're talking to me, or somebody could give you some feedback and be like, I don't think you're very self-aware. Try to roll with it. I think when it's in Libra, it's going to be a little bit easier to deal with than when it's in Virgo, because Virgo is going to be very kind of between the eyes, direct, especially with the trines to Pluto. That's very kind of nitpicky, but it's necessary because it's helping us kind of correct things. So socially, Libra, as this retrograde is starting, pay attention to what partners are saying. Pay attention to what critiques you're getting. It can be coming from therapists. It can be coming from romantic partners, business partners. And that's going to be that opposition that you're seeing between Mercury retrograde and Jupiter, and where we can take that information, integrate it more, and kind of work on ourselves so we can show up and be better in relationships in general, okay? And I want to give you guys these key dates. So the key dates are going to start August 20th. Now, this is when Mercury entered shadow, which means this is where Mercury will retrograde all the way back to, and that was at 24 degrees of Virgo. And it was in opposition to Neptune and Pisces. So like I said, it was kind of like otherworldly, like, is this clear? Not seeing things so clearly, like, what's the path forward? On the 22nd of August, Mercury in Virgo came into a trine of Pluto and Capricorn for the first time. Now, like I said, during retrogrades, we see transits happen several times, because it'll make the trine, retrograde, make the trine again, go direct, make the trine for the 3rd time. So it's trying to work with that energy with Pluto. So Mercury trine Pluto is really strong, mental focus, being able to uncover, research things, really getting to the bottom of things. And it's very practical because it's going to be an earth sign. So it's about power, right? Overcoming issues and power struggles, or being able to kind of cut to the core of an issue and problem solve. So you'll want to look back at this date as these trines are happening to see what was taking place around those dates. On August 25th, Mercury entered into the sign of Libra. On September 2nd, Mercury in Libra came into the first opposition with Jupiter in Aries. So that was that sense of what am I learning about myself through relationships with other people? On the 9th, Mercury retrograde begins at 8 degrees of Libra. On September 18th, Mercury in Libra will make an opposition to Aries, Jupiter in Aries again. So this is the second opportunity, I will say, with an opposition to get information from other people about ourselves or feedback. And this is at 4 degrees, so it's a different degree point. On September 22nd, we're going to see the Sun-Mercury Cazimi. This is happening at 0 degrees of Libra, which happens to also be the fall equinox here in the northern hemisphere, so the start of fall. The Cazimi is Mercury retrograding, going ahead of the Sun, relaying a message. So this is the halfway point to the Mercury retrograde. If you haven't figured out what the Mercury retrograde is about by this point, likely look for insights on the 22nd. There can be some unexpected email, conversation, relationship, person who shows up into your life. Mercury can be about results, answers, and Libra is about finding balance. So we might uncover something about relationships very significant on the 22nd. On the 23rd, Mercury will re-enter the sign of Virgo. On the 26th of September, Venus in Virgo will conjunct Mercury retrograde at 26 degrees. So we've got Mercury going retrograde, Venus conjuncts it. Really important, right? Because the Sun's in Libra. So we have to be looking at what's going on with Venus. And Venus is technically not entirely too happy in Virgo. So I think the Sun in Libra highlighting relationships, Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus in its fall, oh boy. That would be the day that we're hearing from people from the past. That is the day that we're putting old relationships to rest. That is the day where we might see issues with infidelity because it's all going to be 12th house to that Libra Sun. On the 26th as well, Mercury will also trine Pluto retrograde for the second time at 26 degrees. So it's very similar to August 22nd. Then on October 2nd, we're going to see Mercury retrograde end. This will end at 24 degrees of Virgo within a 1 degree opposition of Neptune. So we're still trying to kind of fight our way through the fog and figure out some kind of clarity. October 6th, Mercury will trine Pluto retrograde at 26 degrees for the 3rd time. So you want to look at the other 2 times that happened. And finally, on October 17th, Mercury post-shadow ends. Okay, so what does it mean? We've been in the shadow energy really since August 20th, right? So we're going on almost like 2 weeks of being in the shadow. So likely we already know what's kind of going on. We're seeing the breakdown. Even if the retrograde won't actually officially happen for us until the 9th. If you're wanting to know when can I sign things, when can I do things, if you want to wait just until the Mercury retrograde ends, you can wait until the Mercury retrograde ends. That's going to be October 2nd, but the truth is that it's going to station in opposition to Neptune, so that's not very clear, and it still needs to backtrack and go through some of the degrees. I would advise you, if you can waiting until closer to October to make any big moves, relationship-wise, moves, launches, anything like that. At the very least, wait until Mercury comes into a trine with Pluto, which will be around October 6th. So some of you guys said that you like having the dates. It's easier to kind of put this in order. When I was doing the rapid fire in the other video, I was kind of going through it, looking at it for the first time. So I wanted to make sure that you guys had everything. I have Mercury retrograde. Mercury's retrograde on my ascendant, and I have Saturn square Mercury. So there's a lot of me trying to kind of make sure that everything is like perfect and like put together really well, so it's more digestible. So hopefully that's helpful. Let's get into who it's going to affect the most. So obviously the retrograde will be from 24 degrees of Virgo all the way through 8 degrees of Libra, right? So the last decan of Virgo, the first decan of Libra. So anything that's going to be, I would say 23 degrees of Virgo through about 9 degrees of Libra is going to be affected the most because Mercury will retrograde through those placements. Sun, moon, and rising. Real emphasis, obviously, on those 3, but I would say listen for your rising horoscope because that's going to tell you where it's happening. So for 23 to 29 degrees of Virgo, okay, I put an asterisk because it's important. This is significant because the Mercury retrograde will go directly through these placements. So if you have a rising there, it's going to be different than if you have a sun there, if you have a moon. Just generally speaking, you know, the rising is going to be more about your body, how you communicate with other people. And it might have to do with your appearance. And if it's your moon sign, it's going to be about rethinking emotions, something relating to your home, maybe your mother. your relationships, and also when you have it retrograde through your sun, very personal about how you think about yourself, and it's about your goals and like making sense of information. So if you have Virgo placements 23 to 29, pay attention because it's going to be right in the direct line of fire. 0 to 9 degrees of Libra, sun, moon, rising. This retrograde is going to be happening through your personal placements, and it will dip back into Virgo. So for Libra risings, that's your body, it's your appearance, how you communicate. Libra sun, it's about your relationship with yourself, maybe your career, your happiness. And moons, it's about your living situation, your emotions. And it's interesting for you, Libra, because it is personal, but Libra still deals with other people. So something about you reworking something versus other people is going to come up, okay? So those are the placements that will have conjunctions, which means that it's coming into conjunct with your personal planets or your angles. It's very significant. A conjunction is the most, potent kind of aspect we can have in astrology. So there's a rebirth going on, right? Especially for, I would say, Virgo and Libra risings. You guys really need to pay attention because there's something that's really getting worked out for you. 23 to 29 degrees of Capricorn and Taurus. You are going to experience a trine. That is because Mercury in its retrograde will dip back into Virgo. It will trine. Earth trines are practical. It's going to be harmonious because it's going to be in a sister sign. It's about communicating and relating information. You might feel like things are actually kind of coming together for you, okay? Same thing goes for 0 to 9 degrees of Gemini or Aquarius. So because you're going to see that the retrograde will start in Libra, it'll spend most of its time in Libra. As it retrogrades through Libra degrees, it's going to form trines to you. In a sister sign, it's about information, but it's about sharing of information. It's socializing, it's intellect. So it's going to be really beneficial for you guys. For 23 to 29 degrees of the mutable signs, okay? So this will be Gemini, Sag, and Pisces. You will experience a square, okay? Squares are difficult, they're challenging. We see pressure. There is a need to pivot or to act. It's especially challenging for you guys because in the midst of this, we also have Mars and Gemini. So you guys are going to have a little bit more of a difficult time in sharing ideas, relaying ideas, agreeing. The beauty is when you have these squares in some of your angular houses, a lot of things really change. So there's a need to kind of reorganize something or rework something, okay? 0 to 9 degrees of Aries, Cancer, and Capricorn. You'll also experience a square. The mutable squares are more about our beliefs and ideas and truth. The cardinal squares are like, this isn't working, so here's the repercussion. Cardinal is more about things happening and kind of being a little bit more assertive or initiating something. So if you have planets within the first 9 degrees of these cardinal signs, it's going to be quite intense. So that will be Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, rising. You guys are going to feel the square. It's going to be amplified because of also the opposition to Jupiter. So we're going to see some kind of T-square going on based off your chart. Realize it's going to affect 3, if not 4 separate areas of your life. And for 23 to 29 degrees of Scorpio and Cancer, you will experience a sextile. That's because Mercury in its retrograde through Virgo will sextile your placements. So it's harmonious. You want to take a look at what it's funneling into. Is it your ascendant? Is it your sun or your moon? You have to do a little action in the retrograde area to be able to better facilitate the sextile to some of these other placements. And sextiles are kind of, like I said, they're harmonious, they're softer, kind of like Venus energy, but you have to make it work for you. And for 0 to 9 degrees of Leo and Sagittarius, you will also experience a sextile. That's because we will see, while Mercury's retrograde in the sign of Libra, it will be sextiling some of your placements, okay? So you'll also benefit from this as well. Who's going to get affected the most outside of Virgo and Libra risings? It's going to be Libra, Virgo, and Gemini risings, okay? Why? Because the Mercury retrograde is in Libra. So Libra placements are going to get hammered. Mercury is what rules Virgo. So anytime there's a Mercury retrograde, Virgos and Geminis get affected because that's their chart ruler. But especially Virgo this time around, because the retrograde will literally be in your sign. So Libra, Virgo, and Gemini risings, take heed of some of the advice that I'm going to give you today. And I want to give you guys some remedies. I don't want to just talk about what's happening. So this is something new that I'm doing. I'm giving you guys some astrological remedies, some ways to be able to work with this energy. So for some of you guys, this might be new. So you're like, I don't work with crystals, or I don't work with herbs, or like, I don't understand how this stuff works. Don't worry. For those of you guys who are just getting into it, hopefully this is helpful. Because Mercury is much associated with the air element, okay, even though it's going to be retrograding in air and earth, you can work with the element of air or earth, okay? So I like during Mercury retrogrades to burn incense because it's a great way to honor, you know, mercurial energy. This one happens to be in an air sign. You can also work with like chimes or bells because that is the element of air. It clears energy, but it's also incorporating Venus, which is where the retrograde is in Libra. I like burning orange candles, okay? And I like to do that and put like a Mercury symbol carved into the candle or on the glass, whatever you want, or you can like burn the little orange votive candles. I like to burn them on Wednesdays, and if you like to work with planetary hours, you can burn that on a Mercury hour. So check out planetary hours. Each hour of the day is going to have a certain planet ruler. If you don't want to do that, you can just do that during a Wednesday because that is going to be Mercury's day. Herbs that I like to work with, these are just some of the more common ones. There's a ton, but lavender, orange, dill, and licorice. These are all associated with the planet Mercury. If you want to put some lavender oil in a candle and burn it, great. If you want to use a diffuser, awesome. If you want to put oranges on your altar, awesome. But these are a couple of the herbs that are associated with Mercury. Some crystals that I would recommend would be lapis, blue lace agate, moldavite, and adventurine. These are all great for Mercury retrograde. So if you're like a rock hound and if you've got a whole collection of things, these can be things that you can carry on you, keep it in your pocket, put it in your purse, put it on your altar space. It's going to help with communication. I really like Mercury. Maybe it's because I'm super mercurial, but he's super trickster. He always speaks in like riddles and things. And I always find that there's like really strange ways that Mercury kind of communicates with me that I really appreciate. So whenever there's a Mercury retrograde, I try to do something for Mercury just to be like, hey, take it easy on me. I don't need any communication breakdowns. I don't need any problems. I don't want to lose any luggage, that kind of stuff. So I'll usually put something out for Mercury. Things that I like to offer for Mercury are keys because he unlocks things. And it can be symbolic of like, you know, opening up things for me, like clearing the way. So that's why a lot of people like to associate Mercury with like obstacle removal or anything in regards to road opener work. I like to leave him oranges, orange flowers. Sometimes on my altar, I'll put a shot of whiskey, some coins. I'll even give him a piece of chocolate. These are all things that like Mercury seems to like. So sometimes I'll put something like that out for him on a Wednesday. And I like doing road opener work. So it's great for like clearing everything out. So if you feel blocked in an area of your life, you know, burning an orange candle or a road opener candle, sitting down, writing everything out that you're clearing, that you just want to blast, you know, kind of away. That's mental blocks, physical blocks, energy blocks, whatever. Great time to do it during the Mercury retrograde. Sometimes I like to like open up all the doors and the windows and like clean the house and then just like burn a bunch of stuff just to like get rid of all the static energy in the space. But yeah, road opener work is great. You can also leave offerings at a crossroads. So if you want to go to a crossroads somewhere where you live, if you're not freaked out about doing it during the daytime, you can do it at night. And just go and leave an offering, you know, go and leave a key or something that is going to be symbolic of Mercury, and you leave it where two roads intersect. So it literally has to be a crossroads. You can wear the color green, especially on Wednesdays. I wasn't even thinking about that, but I'm wearing green. But wearing green definitely helps because that is very much associated with Mercury, and it does have connections to Venus as well. Fasting on Wednesdays is something else you can consider doing. We've seen this also in like some like Vedic, you know, traditions. Vedic astrology has everything from recommended precious stones to like, you know, certain offerings and things that you do for deities. But fasting can be something that's really simple to do on Wednesdays. And meditation. Meditation is so important during a Mercury retrograde because we're turning inward. We're thinking something through. We're thinking about ourselves. We're thinking how to better communicate. And it's what we do while this energy is kind of wonky, right? So remember that during a retrograde, things are hidden, right? They're hidden and they're about to be uncovered. The retrograde is symbolic of Mercury going to the underworld, getting the information, coming back, bringing it to us, and it's something that we did not see. It was in the shadows. Now we're going to see this more when we actually finally get out of the shadow, and we actually need to see Mercury get about 10 degrees away from the sun. So that's not going to be until later into October. And by then we're coming into eclipses as well. So the second half of October is likely to be quite busy. All right, so that's the long and short of it, guys. I hope that was helpful. This is now going to be my Mercury retrograde predictions for each and every one of the 12 signs. So you want to listen for your rising, your sun, and your moon signs. As always, I'm a tropical Western astrologer, and this is going to be whole sign predictions, and I'm going to take you through each and every one of the 12 signs. So this is going to be for Aries and Aries rising. How's it going? Hope you guys are doing well. We've got a Mercury retrograde taking place in Libra. So it's starting in your 7th house of other people. Mercury rules your 6th house of coworkers, daily routine, assistance, but it's also about delays or accidents. It also rules your 3rd house of communication, siblings, and documents. I think generally speaking, there can be miscommunications with other people about care. You know, whose responsibility it is to feed the dog, whose responsibility it is to process documents or paperwork at home, at work. There can be conflicts with siblings about responsibilities. You can have like neighbors that are kind of coming and harassing you and saying like, can you clean up that tree in the front yard? Like there's trash all over, like, because the 3rd house is also relating to neighbors. But I think it's also just reworking the way that you communicate with other people. You can be getting some criticism from others about your behavior or about your patterns or your habits or your tendencies. Try not to be defensive. One of the best things that I can tell you is that when Mercury goes back into your 6th house, it's going to come into a trine with Pluto, and it's going to open everything up and help you like learn about how to change and transform some of your habits, or something about your work, maybe even your work habits. How much you're working on things, and really kind of finding more balance, not just in your health, but also in your relationships in general. Just know that when Mercury does station, we're going to see your planet, your ruling planet Mars, that is going to be in a square with Mercury in your 6th, and it'll also be in a square with Neptune. So it might take you a little bit into mid-October to get this kind of worked out. I'm wondering if this is going to be about you going back and forth and being like, there's delays, there's hang-ups, there's issues with my car. I'm having issues. If you have health problems, it can be stuff relating to the lungs or the mind. And it's really mind over matter during these transits, okay? Watch for your communications with others. Aries rising, you are one of the people who are likely to hear from people from the past. So just a heads up, if there is a need to kind of wrap up relationship stuff, if you finally want to close the door on someone, if you've been going back and forth with someone, you are likely to see, things really kind of intensify throughout this period as a result of the Mercury retrograde. All right. Good luck, Aries. I hope that's helpful for you. Let's take this now to Taurus and Taurus rising. What's up, Taurus? How's it going? We've got a Mercury retrograde happening for you, Taurus, in Libra, and that is going to be in your 6th house. So we will see Mercury retrograde from your 6th into your 5th. Well, Mercury retrograde in the 6th house brings up things like delays with scheduling. If you have to hire somebody to do something, there can be some issues with it, some issues with scheduling. If you're hiring like a new trainer, if you're hiring a new assistant, if you're trying to get something done, because the 6th house is people who help you, there can be some delays here, okay? Mercury rules your 2nd house of purchasing power, money, and resources. It also rules your 5th house of creativity, love, and children. I'm wondering, like, are you hiring somebody to help you with a creative project? And are you like, come on, time is money. What am I paying you for? You're not showing up on time. Or I've paid for something. Am I getting the service? Is it taking longer than I thought? Something like that can happen. The fact that Mercury is also dipping back into your 5th house, which deals with romance, children, and we're also going to see that there are some, it's not exact, but there's some slight trines to Uranus, Taurus. Some of you guys are going to have some unexpected interactions with lovers. You might have some stuff going on where you have some kids that are unruly in your life, or there can be some unexpected pregnancies, Taurus. So just keep that in the back of your mind, especially a Mercury retrograde in the 5th house. That's something that we usually see. If it's not that, it can be about you thinking about returning to dating and needing to get on the same page with your partner about making more time for romance and making more time for intimacy and doing things that can be fun together, reconnecting with your inner child, and even spending time with your own children and having time for playtime with them seems really important, okay? Good luck. Let's take this to Gemini and Gemini rising. Gemini, how's it going? This is important because Mercury rules your chart. So it's not in any of your personal placements per se. You're the first of the mutable signs that I'm going to talk to, so I'm just going to let you know. Between the Mercury retrograde, which is already important because it rules your first house, it's going to dip into Virgo, oppose Neptune, and it's also going to square Mars. So Mars in your first house is kind of that focal point of like, how are you going to respond to things, right? Are you going to shoot from the hip and have harsh words and be kind of confrontational? Maybe. That can definitely be a theme as Mars is here. I would say make sure, first of all, choose your words wisely and make sure you're clear before you jump to any conclusions, okay? Because when Mercury's retrograde, we don't always get all the facts or the information up front. It looks like Mercury is retrograding from your 5th house of children, dating, creativity, and romance into your 4th. Now, when it retrogrades, like I said, it'll oppose Neptune. So it's a lot of like, is my house feeling like a mess? Do I need more space for creativity? Similar to Taurus, is there a pregnancy? Because 5th house rules children and you've got Mercury going retrograde into your 4th house. Some of you guys might feel like your kids' stuff is all over the house and it's driving you nuts. Some of you guys might be like, well, we're expanding our family. We need to get a bigger home. Some of you guys are returning back to your childhood home, or you're going and visiting family. Maybe you're staying in your old bedroom. That could be something else that could happen. But Mercury being your chart ruler, it's also about you. So it can be about you going back and finishing up stuff relating to property, real estate, uncovering some kind of secret truth about family, about property. There can be a power struggle that's going on too. But I think for a lot of you, it's just, how do I create more space in my home so I can feel like I can create or I can have playtime? Kind of challenging because of that opposition to Neptune. So you are one of the several signs that I would say really watch this play out all the way through mid-October. Be careful with how you're communicating with people because you may not have all the facts yet. And I get the impression that some of you guys might be experiencing just changes on the home front. People moving in or out, like roommates, looking at other areas, maybe getting a document or some kind of paperwork, or having to talk to a landlord about making changes in where you're living is very possible. The oppositions to Neptune is also possibly going to affect your work schedule. So there's lots of changes across the board. Hang in there and really look for that cazimi to kind of highlight, like, okay, is this a good thing? Maybe it is good that we move because we're going to have to move down the road anyway. Or maybe I do need to, launch a business because I want to spend more time at home anyway. It can actually be quite beneficial for you, okay? Good luck, Gemini. Now we've got Cancer and Cancer rising. We have got a Mercury retrograde that is happening in your 4th house. I'm a little ahead of myself, sorry. It's retrograding from Libra 4th house back into Virgo 3rd house, okay? So the 4th house, home, family, the mother, where you were born, the homeland, how you're communicating perhaps maybe with a parent or a sibling or an aunt or an uncle. You might be one of the signs that's having a change in your living situation as well. 3rd house is more movement. 4th house is where we live. So I'm wondering, have you been staying somewhere, thinking about moving, or are you getting wind that you have to move? Do you get a document or a phone call, or does somebody say, hey, you got to go? Especially if you've been staying with extended family. It can also be that family's reaching out saying, hey, can you come visit? Can you come stay here? Now, Mercury does not just rule your 3rd house, it also rules your 12th. So this is a time of endings, believe it or not, like some final decisions in regards to, am I done talking to my aunt? Am I over, this drama with my sister? Do I finally, squash a problem that I'm having with my mother? These things can come up during these retrogrades. Like some of the other early degree cardinal signs, this is complex because it is squaring your ascendant. So it already tells me that you're trying to keep the peace with some people at home or within the family, but you're getting emotional. And it's also in an opposition to Jupiter in your 10th house. So it's like quite intense if you're a Cancer rising within the first 9 degrees, because I feel like there's a lot changing within your home life and also with your career, and you're kind of caught in the middle. My advice would be work with when Mercury goes back into Virgo, okay, because it's going to sextile your Cancer placements. It's also going to start coming into trines with Pluto in the 7th. So before you go saying, I'm done with this relationship, I'm cutting this person off, like really try to cut to the issue of what the problems have been, be honest, be authentic, be direct, and try to communicate in a way that's going to help kind of clear out any miscommunications. You are one of the signs that I would say be careful signing leases, be careful also buying cars, because that retrograde in your 3rd house makes me feel like may not be the best, quite frankly. And if you're not entirely sure where you're going to land, it's important for you to be communicating with people and trying to be vulnerable, so that way you can really expand in your relationships. You know, you could also be hearing from people from the past, because Mercury is retrograde through your 4th house, text messages, emails, phone calls, social media. So watch out for that. Good luck, Cancer. We've got now Leo and Leo rising. Mercury going retrograde in Libra. It's in your 3rd house. 3rd house, communications, cars, movement. Okay, so the retrograde is going to hit 2 houses. So some of you guys it's going to sound kind of similar. But it's going to start in your 3rd house and it's going to go into your 2nd house. Okay, so Mercury rules your 2nd house of money and things that you own. And it also rules your 11th house of friends and goals. Okay, so Leo. In this case, when it's in Libra, it's beneficial for you. Maybe you heard I said that it was going to create a sextile to your ascendant or your personal Leo placements. A Mercury retrograde in the 3rd, dropping back into the 2nd, makes me think that you're thinking about a move or buying a car maybe, but you're assessing your finances first. And you're kind of like, what can I afford? Like, how much, do I already owe other people? Jupiter rules your 8th house. I could also see this is like you becoming aware of what your financial goals are, your spending power, what it could be. I think when Mercury drops back down into your 2nd, it's very powerful because it's also going to be trining Pluto here in your 6th. So it's like you being like, can I afford the expensive gym membership? Am I eating out too much? Where can I save money? Because the retrograde in the 2nd is about how you can conserve more money, or how you can kind of make sense of what you're eating and eating things that are healthier for your body. There can also be miscommunications with others in general about money. There can be miscommunications with neighbors, aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings. Be careful with documents. Like if you're negotiating something, like if you're negotiating a raise or somebody's saying like, yeah, we're going to give it to you, like get it in writing, read the fine print, and just be really careful about documents and financial exchanges because of that opposition to Neptune. It makes me feel like some things are fuzzy and they may not be entirely too clear, to be honest with you. And if you're thinking about making a larger purchase, like buying a car or something like that, because eventually the sun will go into the 3rd, or paying for a trip, you're going to know more about whether or not it's a good investment or if you can afford it as you get closer to October. Okay. Good luck with that. Now we've got Virgo and Virgo rising. So Virgo, this is very important for you because Mercury rules your chart. So Mercury rules your 1st house, which is yourself, your body. Mercury also rules your 10th house, which is about career. Now, where Mercury is retrograding is where in your life it's going to affect you. So I see a Mercury retrograde from the 2nd into the 1st is a reevaluation of self, what you're worth, right? And how you're showing up in the world. Lots of room to renegotiate and to try to bring more money in, or find a job that's going to pay better, or be asking a boss, for a raise, especially because of all those squares to Mars in the 10th. You're working hard with Mars and Gemini. It's going to be there for a number of months. It is frustrating, yes, because it's going to square personal planets in Virgo. It's also going to square Neptune, and there can be a sense of you being like, do people see me as too aggressive, or do people see me as too passive? And where am I too focused at work and not focused enough on relationships, and what about me? So it's a little intense right now for you, Virgo. It's going to be like that this season. It's also going to be like that in Sag season. And just know that there are things that are changing, both in terms of who you are, how you communicate, your relationships, and your career. But a retrograde 2nd house can have you regretting something that you bought or purchased, giving something back, saying, I don't value this anymore. I don't want this anymore. I'm going to return it. There can be issues getting refunds. Okay. So keep receipts if that's necessary. Second house is your possession. So I'm wondering, like, did you buy something that you thought that you liked and then you realize you don't like it? Did somebody give you a gift and they bought the wrong color, the wrong size, and you're having to be like, how do I take this back? I don't have a receipt. That could happen. This is also a time to reevaluate your budget, what you're eating, reevaluate your body. How do you feel in your skin? And not being entirely too hard on yourself. I think Mercury retrograde in your first house, you can be extremely critical of your appearance, your body, how you look, how you carry yourself. You can be more self-conscious because Mercury rules your 10th house. If this were me, I would say if you have fitness goals or health goals or anything like that, if you need more time by yourself, especially in light of this Pisces moon that's kind of setting up here pretty soon, you might be like, man, somebody's telling me that, you know, I'm not showing up for them, but I'm really focused at work. Like you might need a little bit more time to yourself in the midst of this. Be careful with budgeting, be careful with spending, large purchases and things like that. And if there's anything that you can let go of, that you can release, whether it's physical things. I think second house could be like jewelry. It could be a style. It could be things you're willing to sell and part with. It can be really beneficial and it can kind of like declutter and like lighten the load and give you the opportunity to rework how you see yourself or how you want other people to see you. Okay. Good luck, Virgo. Now we've got Libra and Libra rising. Okay, Libra. So this is important for you because it's happening on your ascendant if you're a Libra rising. So Mercury rules your 12th house of subconscious, things that are hidden, things that people don't see, stuff that you do at night, and things relating to privacy behind closed doors, hidden spaces, offices. Virgo in the 12th house for you is going to be like bad health habits, issues with sleep, bad working habits where you overwork to the point of affecting yourself mentally or emotionally. And this can also be about just like hidden communication. So your dreams can be very strong with a Mercury retrograde in your sign, when it's in your sign and when it's in the 12th house, honestly. You're also going to see, because Mercury rules your 9th, that this is about you reevaluating what your beliefs are, right? Praying before you go to sleep, meditating before you go to sleep, reading books before you go to sleep, things that are more hidden or different in nature, right? And a Mercury retrograde that starts in your first house is how you are changing and transforming something about the way you look, dress, or communicate with people. And there's like a sense of you having to rethink the strategy pertaining to this before the retrograde finishes. So a lot of people are going to be like, I want to dress differently. I want to look differently. Libra, don't cut your bangs. Trust me on this. Do not make any crazy changes to your appearance because both you and Virgo, but especially Libra, because Venus is in Virgo right now, you may feel like you're driving yourself crazy because you want to change something about your appearance. And I would say just wait, give it a little bit of time. Don't do that because you may not actually like it. Sit and meditate on it. And also this is about how our spiritual life, our energy, our beliefs affect our physical body. So if you're wanting to change something about your appearance, sleep on it, think about it, look for insight, look for dreams, be working things out privately before you make a big change. Going back to school, studying, or planning travel also can happen here as well. And I think with a Mercury retrograde into your 12th, you need more rest, more sleep. Libra, watch out for those bad habits, okay? Because these oppositions to Neptune, drinking, smoking, oversleeping, not getting things done, spending too much time hanging out, watching TV, being on your phone, like these are things that'll distract you and kind of, not allow you to really work with this the way that you best could, okay? Good luck, Libra. We've got Scorpio and Scorpio rising. What's up, Scorpio? You've got a Mercury retrograde happening in Libra, so it's in your 12th house. It will retrograde from your 12th house into your 11th house. So there's some similarities to Libra. It's going to be more visible, though, because it's going to go into your 11th. Now, Mercury obviously is about communication, right? Information. And Mercury rules your 8th house of other people's money, connection with other people, change, transformation. You have got Mercury retrograding from your 12th into your 11th. So there can be a lot of like reflecting on relationship patterns and habits. things that are going on in relationships that may be subconscious to you because it's 12th house to your ascendant or to your sun. There might be a lot of like pillow talk, talking about things at night. There can be some really prominent, significant dreams for you as well, just like Libra. This can also just be about uncovering things that are going on in your relationships that need to change, communicating and talking about change, changing financial situations, paying things off, spending habits. And Mercury, when it goes retrograde from your 12th into your 11th, is going to be about goals. This is also about reconnecting with friends, reconnecting and socializing. So there's opportunities for you to like hear from friends from the past. If you've been going through some relationship turmoil, friends can be there to help you. If you are thinking about joining a network, getting back active on a social media site, joining a group, anything like that, I think the Mercury retrograde is wonderful, especially because it's going to make oppositions to Jupiter. So it's going to help you find new ways to have healthier habits or learn more about how you're going to be investing or using your spending power. Mercury retrograde in the 12th makes me feel like you can be wrapping up things from old relationships or relationships from the past. Just keep in mind that when Mercury goes direct, it's going to be in Virgo in your 11th, and it's going to square Mars, and it's also going to square Neptune. So that's a little tricky for everybody, but that's a little tricky because Mars is your chart ruler. So to see Mercury square Mars and then square Neptune tells me that your goals and maybe a romantic partner's goals, or in regards to like a creative project or children, like you're not on the same page as another person in regards to this, and there's some conflict in regards to whether or not people are open and changing their mind and changing how they communicate. Okay, so good luck with that, Scorpio. And we've got Sag and Sag rising. So we've got Mercury going retrograde in Libra. So it's going to be in your 11th house, and it'll retrograde back into your 10th house. So your 11th house, friends, goals, networks, friendships in general, the people you hang out with. This can also be goals pertaining to relationships and how you're socializing with some people. Mercury rules your 7th house of relationships. It also rules your 10th house of career. So Sag, this is a little intense because when it retrogrades back, for two reasons. One is before it even retrogrades back, it's opposing your chart ruler, right? So oppositions kind of have this flavor of like relationships because it's others, especially when it's in Aries and Libra. So you've got Mercury, which rules career, right? And relationships. That's in opposition to Jupiter. So there can be a sense of like, friends from the past coming back and being like, what are you working on? And you're like, this is how my love life is going. This is how my business is going. Like you have good things to share with people. It's going to be when Mercury comes into a square with Mars and also an opposition with Neptune, that things get a little tricky, especially if you're a Sag rising or if you've got some first house Sag energy. Just hang tight. The Mercury retrograde is going to be a little intense for you. I could see it as like reconnecting and working with people from the past, people who you haven't worked with in general. If you have a business or if you collaborate and you work with a friend, it looks like there's just, defining new dynamics in working relationships or friendships or home relationships. It's almost like they might all kind of be at odds with each other, There will be Mercury dipping back into your 10th, which is going to rework your public image, what you're doing work-wise. Maybe you're going from, being an employee to being your own boss. Maybe you're expanding your business. Maybe you're now identifying differently in the world because you're in a relationship because Mercury is retrograde in your 10th house. You may be one of those signs. I would say be careful about how much relationship PDA you're putting out there. There can be, a sense of being like, oh, I wish I didn't post that photo. Things didn't work out. Or, I told my friends that we were together and then we had a fight and we broke up. These arguments and conflicts can also be with people that you're working with. So it is not limited to romantic relationships, but you are going to notice that they are all going to kind of affect each other. If you are introducing a romantic partner to your friends, there might be some interesting conversations that are coming up about that in general. Okay. Good luck, Sag. Capricorn and Capricorn rising. How's it going? You have got a Mercury retrograde happening in Libra. This is in your 10th house. It's about career and your role out in the world and how people see you and how you're organizing presentations and showing up on time and getting work done. Now, Mercury rules your 9th house, which is associated with your beliefs, legality, and philosophy, traveling, higher education. It's also associated with your 6th house, which is about coworkers, space, and travel. I'm wondering, Capricorn, as Mercury goes retrograde, first of all, yeah, it's a little intense here because it's going to square your ascendant if you're a Cap rising and oppose Jupiter. So Mercury in the 10th in opposition to Jupiter is some unforeseen things coming in terms of work and home. Okay, you're not going to be able to plan for some of this stuff. Jupiter rules the 12th house. Unexpected travel, unexpected legal things, changes in your philosophy and your beliefs about your career and your reputation, as well as about home and living situations, okay? Some of you guys are going back to work. Some of you guys are traveling and relocating for work. Some of you guys are completing programs and you're like, now I can get a job because I've, gotten my bachelor's or my master's or I got a certification. Some of you guys are thinking about going back to teaching or training. The nice thing is that when Mercury goes back into Virgo, it is going to trine Cap placements. It is also going to make quite a few aspects to Pluto. So it's about the power of your thought, right? How you communicate, how you make lemons into lemonade, because Mercury rules your 6th. So I think that you're like, okay, well, can I, make the most of this? I'm having a several hour delay while I'm on a work trip. Like, do I, go and explore a city and make time for that? On the flip side, it can be having issues legally, or having issues with coworkers, and there's some setbacks and things that are going on, and it's affecting the way that you look at your daily routine and your work schedule. Health stuff can also impact the ability to work. So a retrograde here, because it's the ruler of your 6th, and also it's associated with the 9th, is I can't go to work. I'm not feeling well. I'm out for a couple days, or I'm not working because I'm traveling, or just taking a step back from work and really thinking about, what your goals are and what your philosophy is when it comes to being of service and the kind of work that you do want to do in the world. Mercury will go retrograde, and come back into Libra. And when it does, it'll still oppose Jupiter. So there's still going to be a sense of wanting to travel, wanting to explore, wanting to learn more. It's very spiritual. And for several months, we're also going to have Mars retrograde in your 6th, which is also an indication that you're possibly making some changes either with your schedule, your health, or where you're living. So that kind of makes sense. Let me know, Capricorn, how that pans out for you. And we've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. Hope you're doing well. We have got a Mercury retrograde in Libra, and that is in your 9th house. It's a sister sign, okay? Also an air sign. So you're going to be seeing that in the midst of the retrograde, Mercury will be making trines to your ascendant, sun, or moon. That's nice because it's just great for opening things up, being able to share, being able to relay information. Mercury rules the 8th house of death, sex, inheritance, taxes, psychological connections, intimacy, fear, and also your 5th house, which deals with children, romance, investing. This can go one of several ways. This can be about, you really reevaluating the relationship that you have with other people and what other people bring you or give you or have to offer you, especially younger people. So it could be your children, it could be a romantic partner. And as Mercury retrogrades into the 8th, it's about returning and having conversations about what other people owe you. It can also be about documents, okay? And you got a lot of oppositions to Neptune. So uncovering documents, having insightful conversations with people about investments, taxes, things like that, things that you need to wrap up. Now, what I'm also kind of curious about is when it goes back into Virgo, it's going to oppose Jupiter several times before it goes into Virgo, which is going to highlight goals. So maybe you're becoming more aware of what your goals are in intimate relationships, what your goals are in investments. There can be some sense of having to pay things off or restructuring a loan or anything like that. Debt consolidation can happen here as well. And if you're having issues pertaining to your love life, children, sexuality, intimacy, it's kind of part of the course. You got to wait until this retrograde kind of wraps up to see what happens. Just know that when it does finish, Mercury will be here in Virgo, and it will be in a square to Mars, and it will also be in a square to Neptune. So I think the question is going to be, how are you better balancing finances to make sense of fifth house topics? If it's to be self-employed, if it's because you're pregnant, if it's because you want to start new creative ventures, if you're really looking at if you can make money off of a hobby, something like that is kind of coming up for you, Aquarius, okay? Good luck. And last but not least, we have our Pisces. How's it going, Pisces? You have got a Mercury retrograde happening in the sign of Libra, okay? So it's your 8th house. Now, Mercury rules your 7th of relationships, your 4th of home and the past. Pisces, my goodness, you and Aries are the signs that we might be seeing that you're hearing from people from the past. So Mercury going retrograde in the 8th, okay? It is about, have I healed and transformed my relationships, right? Do I need to reconnect with surgeons, doctors, lovers, detectives, accountants, people, Mercury, who you partner with? This can also be talking to like intimacy coaches, therapists, going to couples counseling. That stuff can happen. There might be some miscommunications happening with a partner, especially because Mercury rules other people. So I think as it goes retrograde and it opposes Neptune, there can be a sense of somebody saying to you, like, do you even hear me? Are you here for me right now? And it will also come into a square with Mars when it stations in mid-October, which is going to bring up the theme of like, do we still live together? Is this working? Do we move? Are we arguing? This is also about like letting the past go, because Mercury rules the past. So whether this is like becoming more aware of subconscious communication styles, or where you're kind of avoiding having certain conversations with family members or romantic partners, and it's like leading to some kind of conflict, that can be the case. A Mercury retrograde in your 7th is definitely a time where we hear from people from the past. So when Mercury dips back into Virgo, especially because it is ruled by Virgo, there is likely going to be phone calls or some kind of connections. But I would say be very careful here, Pisces, because Mercury is going to oppose Jupiter. So you'll see that even though you're wanting to communicate with people, if you're the one who reaches, other people will probably be like, yeah, I can't, or I can't talk to her, I'm in a relationship, or it's in the past. Like you're gonna have a little bit of opposition. There's also a lot of room for feedback. So I could see Aries rising, Pisces rising, Virgo rising. You guys are going to be the ones where there's going to be lots of opportunities from feedback, where you're giving feedback to a partner or a partner's giving feedback to you. Can people come back and have something to say and make you feel good about yourself and be like, look, it's not you, it's me. There was nothing wrong with you. I wasn't ready, or I should have treated you better. Maybe you could get some closure here, but you could also have lots of conflict going on between family, or if you're in a relationship, some kind of strife between family and also relationships. And I would say do not hide out from this. There can be a sense of you being like, okay, there's too much conflict, I don't want to get involved. My mother-in-law's getting into it, with me, and like my partner is like, getting at my brother. It can be like a total like family affair, not in a good way. So watch for some of that conflict that can come up. And if you're kind of going back and forth in a relationship, hold off on making any physical moves. Also be careful with like engagements, public relationship status changes, and anything in relation to marriage, because there's something that's kind of changing here for you as well. Okay. All right, guys, I hope that was helpful. I'm wishing everybody a really positive Mercury retrograde transit. Obviously, you can put these dates in your calendar. You can come back to this video, leave me some comments and some notes, and let me know what's been playing out for you. I'm sure I will do a video on that, just because the retrograde's happening on my ascendant. So there's so many weird things that are changing for me, and I'm in a Mercury year. So if you're into annual perfections, if you're having an annual perfection year that's associated with Mercury, so if you're having a house that's highlighted by Gemini or Virgo, pay extra attention to this retrograde, because there's going to be a little bit more extra cosmic lessons that are being served up for you, maybe more than normal, okay? I'll be back, obviously, in a couple days. I'm going to see you guys on Saturday night. I'm doing live astrology readings. If you want to join me at 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern. Also, just so you guys know, I feel like I'm beating the drum, but I'm going to let you know, I do have a relationship webinar that I'm doing on the 18th of September and the 25th. I'll put the link somewhere in the description if you guys want to check that out and you want to join me and learn about relationship astrology. I would love to see you there. Otherwise, I will see all of you guys soon. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.